Hello, friends. What is the ideal diet or nutritional plan to decrease your risk of having a heart attack or stroke? I wanted to briefly review that answer with you from this article from the American Heart Association journal called Circulation. So, in terms of what's actually evidence based, there's a couple recommendations you want to always keep in mind because cardiovascular disease and heart disease is the number one killer in the United States. So, first of all, you want to have a goal for maintaining a healthy body weight. That can be through medication, exercise, nutrition, but you want to have that as a goal because we know higher weight, higher BMIs does have a correlation with cardiovascular risk. Number two, grandma's wisdom still applies. Eat lots of vegetables and fruits. Third, you want to have your grains be whole grains as opposed to refined grains. Refined grains are things generally that have been processed or that are not very natural, such as cereals and things like that, as opposed to something like quinoa. In terms of protein, you want to have healthy sources of protein. Not all protein is created equal. Protein from plants is higher quality in terms of cardiovascular risk. Nuts and legumes like chickpea and lentils are higher quality protein than eating a bunch of beef jerky processed sticks. Fish and seafood is high quality protein. And then when you're eating dairy, you want to go for low fat or no fat dairy as opposed to full fat dairy, which often has a lot of high saturated fat in it. And saturated fat is one of the things that we know is connected to cardiovascular risk and the buildup of plaque in the arteries. So that's something to consider with dairy. If you're going to be eating meat or poultry, you want to choose leaner cuts and avoid processed forms. And as I mentioned before, plant oils are very good. Not all fat is bad for you. There's good fats and there's bad fats. So the good fats are things like olive oil, safflower, and corn. And the bad fats are things like butter and lard and tropical oils, which is disappointing to hear because so many people love coconut oil and palm kernel oil, but those tend to really make heart disease and cardiovascular risk higher. As I mentioned, also, you want to have minimally processed foods rather than ultra processed foods. And what that means is pretty much anything in a box or that comes in a plastic wrapper is pretty much ultra processed. You want to try to eat things that actually came out of the ground or look like real food. Basically, eat real food. In addition, you want to minimize the intake of foods with added sugars. That's pretty obvious because we know refined sugars do increase a lot of the cardiovascular risk factors. And then avoiding salt is a big one because salt is often such a big part of a lot of foods. And if you look at the nutritional label, you'll be astounded by how much salt there is in things. And you want to generally limit your salt intake to 2,000 milligrams a day. Drinking alcohol is controversial in the sense that we know that drinking alcohol itself can be contributing to cardiomyopathy, damage to the heart muscle. But on the other hand, there's studies showing that moderate alcohol consumption can improve heart function. My own view is that the reason those studies work is because people who can consume moderately are different than people who cannot consume moderately. So it's a confound. That's one of my hypotheses. But generally, I would avoid alcohol or consume only small amounts of alcohol. The other challenge you want to keep in mind is that you're going to be more likely to follow this advice when you're making your own food, but when you eat outside, when food is prepared outside, you don't have as much control over it. So that's the other thing to keep in mind because that's where people often lose track of their goals. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. And I hope you will take some of these evidence-based guidelines into your life and improve your cardiovascular risk and share this with anyone who you're worried about for heart disease or stroke. Thank you so much.